Hello, everyone. I am Mansi Sharma, Senior Correspondent with ExchangeForMedia.com, and I welcome you all to this very interesting panel wherein we'll discuss how these agencies send in their best bets to Cannes. Just to give you a little overview, as all of us know, Cannes Lions is probably the most prestigious medals that anyone in the industry can hold on to. And definitely, it makes it a Herculean task that goes into the background before sending in the final pitches, creating the briefs, and sending it to the juries. Today, we have the best of the bets discussing with us how do they go about it, what sort of discussions go behind before sending in the entries to the juries. Let me start with welcoming the distinguished panel that we have here today. First of all, we have Ms. Anupama Ramaswamy, who is the managing partner and national creative director at Dentsu Impact. Next, we have Amit Akali, the co-founder and chief creative officer at Wonderlab, possibly the newest agency on the block within this panel and otherwise as well. Then VML Y&R India CCO Mukund Oleti, who also brings in a diverse range of learnings from his roles at various international organizations. We also have Shumanto Chattopadhyay, who is the chairperson and CCO at 82.5 Communications, one of the most dynamic and social media friendly creative heads today. And lastly, but not the least, Keegan Pinto, who is the CCO at FCB Ulka and also holds a quite diverse experience in the field. I welcome you all.
Thanks, Mansi.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mansi.
Thank you so much for giving your time today. And before we dive into the more serious part of the discussion, first of all, one by one, go by and tell me how stressful is it for all of you all a few weeks before you send in the entries to the juries at Cannes. Rated on a scale of 1 to 10 for us. We'll start with Keegan because he's first on my screen.
Scale of 1 to 10, it's 30 on a scale of 1 to 10. No, I have some basic yardsticks, so it's not you. It's a game of rigor, and you've got to be at it, and you've got to feel the migraine for the game. So that's how I see it. It's not a simplistic game. You've got to have maybe a huge quantity of wow ideas and keep playing this little game with yourself, which is pick only one. So you might have a lot of really nice ones, but the game is pick only one. And then, so rigor, largely.
Mukund?
No, I mean, like Keegan was saying, a lot of quality comes with quantity, right? But I think that's about the doing the work. I think doing the work is the stressful part, right? But picking is the easier part, I would say, right? Because I think good work always kind of finds a way to rise to the top. Like, there's no holding back good work. And I don't think there's stress in picking the work when you have the work, right? And of course, there's a whole body of discussion that goes into like crafting the entries, making the entries, and it's reaching the final submission levels, right? I mean, and sometimes it's the results, right? Like, sometimes like pieces like, say, the Chumpy Beats for Parachute has like 27 billion views. Like, who can compete with that? Like, why would you hold it back in your agency, right? So there are like a mix of like, great ideas, beautifully executed, and sometimes great result. I think good work kind of finds itself to the top, and then I think it's easier to pick those works and like make that submission.
Great. Amit?
So honestly, it's not very stressful. We've been doing this for years and years. I think just keep a few principles in mind. I think I keep reminding myself that every entry costs $1 lakh. So that's one pressure that put on myself. And the other thing I think about is that what if I was paying for this from my pocket? And to think about it, for the last 5 years, I was paying for it from my pocket. So yeah, so I think I think you have to be very, very clear and loyal about every entry. The work is the only thing that matters. Nothing else can influence it. It's serious money going out there. And yeah, I think if you're sensible about your entries, it's all good. Yeah.
Sumanto, you have been listening very intently. I've been observing.
No, I was just telling. So, yeah, I think it's stressful, and the reason that it's stressful is when, uh, as a, and now I'm talking as being part of a larger system where there were loads of entries, and every creative team thinks that the sun shines out of their beak. So, like they think that their campaign is the next Grand Prix winner, and if you're not selecting it, and you can only select a few, let's say from the larger Ogilvy group, then you're biased again, and you don't get it, and that's why you're not selecting it. So I think that stress of dealing with that disappointment is that is the stress. Otherwise, I think over the years, as Amit was saying, that you do get, you sort of do get a sense of what does win. And I would say that more than what, like when you've got a pool of entries from which to select, like I think most of us know what's definitely not going to win. I think we can't be 100% sure that something's going to win. So I think that's where the stress comes from. I can't put a number to it, but that's the stress.
Anupama?
Yeah, so I think the money part is the most important one. Like choosing from a gamut of things and not, and you have so many people to please in your own system, saying that you've chosen from another team, you haven't chosen from our team, etc. But at the end of the day, there is no rule. There is absolutely no rule. Like sometimes the best of the work that we feel should win a gold, sometimes wins a bronze or a merit. So every time it's different. Also depends a lot on the jury, who's there, and keeping those things in mind. If I think a lot goes in the homework of it. I'm rather not stressed this year at all, because this year we have chosen not to enter for whatever reason, because of the COVID and all those things. So the stress is not there. So I'm pretty relaxed.
Same here.
Otherwise, even a day before, like not day before, the night before, you're sitting and rewriting the entries and rewriting, recrafting everything, and the case studies and stuff like that. So
Just speaking about the entries also, there's an opposite side to the story also, right? You can't overdo it on a particular entry. I mean, on the jury side, and everybody's been there, you actually get irritated if one entry gets, entered too many times, or you see it too many times. It has to be relevant, it has to be in the right category. So it's about choosing just right, not overdoing it, not uh, obviously the stresses, have you underdone it and therefore lost out on an award. But the key would be also not to overdo it.
Sorry, I just want to share an anecdote here. We were talking about, very enthusiastic creative teams who probably won in previous years. And then I think that we all become very arrogant or complacent. And there's one particular guy, he actually, when we were deciding what to send, so he had put down something which was the title of the entry. And I said, can you show us the entry? This is within our system. And he said, no, I've not done it yet. But but because he was riding high on the success of the last couple of awards, so I said, and I said, and we would generally be deciding what to send when the initial last date is already over. Anyway, as a system, we did that. And he said, no, don't worry, I've spoken to so and so, and it's going to go. We have enough time. So yeah, so that's just an aside. Sorry.
I think the real stress lies in picking the right categories. Do you guys feel stressed about that, or is it just me?
That was my next question. Like, how do you go about picking this category for this particular campaign?
I think a lot of homework needs to be done. Past 3 years, 4 years, what are the type of things that are winning in that particular category? And then, because if you have only $100, you will think 10 times before putting it in, say, two of them, and not put it in the other two if you feel that, oh, it had a higher chance in the other one. So there's always a debate on that. And with public service campaigns, it's always there. It's always there.
Yeah,
but I think the categories, so many categories there, and it's very interesting because every category comes with a different jury. So ideally, if you can take one piece and you can spread it across categories, you just get exposed to more juries, right? So that's a tip that I kind of use. And then again in the category, I mean, I think don't overdo it, but there are some, particular things that really help. So for example, healthcare, communication to doctors for disease awareness, and you have something like that, it makes sense to put it into a specific category. I'm actually quite proud of my whole entry win ratio. So when we won the agency of the year, we actually had just 13 pieces that we entered, and 12 of them, I mean 13 entries actually, 4 pieces, 13 entries, and 12 of them won something or the other, won a shortlist or something or the other, and there was the agency of the year, so it was actually 13 out of 13. So
Wow.
yeah, so pretty proud, and if I may boast so
Also,
myself. But I
like,
think it's just homework, it's just calculation, homework, and lots of luck. Yeah.
So
Yeah,
one
but
of the
with the
Amit, there's a
sorry.
lot of even the categories are evolving, right? Every year there's new categories being and subcategories being added. I think that kind of adds to the whole tension part of it.
So one thing I wanted to add here is that in my experience, one is that I've had experiences where they've actually called you and said, "Listen, we're shifting your entry
yeah,
from
many times.
this category to another one because that's more appropriate." And the other one is that we've called them, and they're quite helpful. Sometimes if
Yeah.
you're stuck and you're not, because honestly speaking, sometimes the category descriptions also leave you scratching your head. So it's difficult to know.
No, also,
Yeah.
if you remember, Amit, healthcare, not many people used to enter healthcare before you started venturing into it. I want to say this about Amit, like healthcare हम लोग के वो इसमें नहीं आता था, radar में ही नहीं आता था, and then suddenly he started winning after a series. And also every year they do introduce categories, subcategories, which because most people think that they know everything, they don't go through those subcategories properly.
I just want to say that, of course, Amit takes the cake when it comes to healthcare. But the first year that healthcare was introduced, I did win a award there. And
Sorry.
unfortunately, it was it's and they started it. It was a day before the regular date of starting. So I missed being there for the award.
Okay.
But Shumanto, you inspired me. Yeah.
Just that.
You showed
I
you
knew,
always
and you left me in the dust. After.
no, but you always show the way, whether it's which restaurant to eat at or which category to enter at. But yeah.
I have a point on categories. So, so the list is damn elaborate, and so 2 points. There is some truth in it's almost like early on in my career there was a big trick one had learned, which is create for categories, and it did come with some success. So understand the category, pick the ones that are niche. There's some historic pieces of work which have been radio under 10 seconds, radio up to 5 seconds, and things like that, so there are on a serious note, there are those tricks. On another note, the game that the list plays with you is, there's one brain teaser after the other. So it's just not getting easy. So you spend a lot of months and weeks for the work, right? And the work is coming out of a lot of difficulty. And then you kind of eventually choose one or two. And then you think your job is largely done, but then it's such a difficult task to choose the category, because so on one side you think Can is making it easier for you by sort of cutting it really slim, and there are a million categories. And then you also think, is this a bit of a capitalistic move, which is, so it's almost like the Grammys, right? So there's the pop act, there's the pop single artist, there's a pop duo vocal, there's the pop band, and it's like a million categories. So it's a strange one there, to be honest.
Egan, obviously it's to make more money. Come on, yeah.
Mondo has got it figured.
No, actually, I actually love the way Can introduces the categories, in the sense that I think Can evolves far. I mean, this is not an award conversation, but Can evolves far before the industry evolves where categories are concerned. And in fact, Can, if anything, helps the industry evolve.
Yeah.
With this entire thing that, last 5-10 years, we've been talking about integration, but Can had an integration thing about 25 years back,
Exactly.
we talk about the big idea, and Can had a titanium about 25 years back. And, we've been talking about branded content in entertainment. We've been talking about the importance of healthcare, and Can just doesn't have categories of healthcare or branded content or innovation. They've got full award shows for, these things that we call the future. For the last 8 years,
Right.
7 years, they've
Yeah.
had these categories. So I think it's it Can actually shows the way, to the way the industry is evolving. And again, just, so social influencer wasn't a thing 3 years back, right? And Can had a category just when it started, which is
Exactly.
use of social influencers.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I think in that sense it's quite inspirational.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
It's the
like today,
work that's pushing them, right? Sorry,
yeah.
Hmm.
Sumant, please
No,
go
I
ahead.
was just adding that, yeah, like today they've, now they've introduced something called creative business transformation lines or
Yes.
sustainability goals lines.
Exactly.
I think at every state they are completely in step with what's the way
What's happening?
advertising and communication is evolving on the one hand, and the other, generally the way the world is evolving, the way people's thinking is changing. This purpose led, or the human
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
sustainable.
Right.
They're in step with sort of every mega trend, so to speak.
In fact, 5 years before the trend probably happened. So I
Yeah.
think they guided. I've actually like studied this, and they've actually guided it. This whole purpose conversation, and they had these, Can for good, very
Correct.
early on. So they
Yeah.
actually kind of are, guide the trend actually, which is quite amazing. Yeah. Yeah.
Right.
Even this year, I think they have
Glass Lions, yes.
creative transformation for business, right? So that's a
Exactly.
new
That's
line.
what I was mentioning. Yeah.
Yeah,
Creative business
data came
transformation.
3 years ago. I think use of data was, sorry,
Yeah.
2 years ago. I think their use of data. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Correct. I mean, e-commerce, use of data, mobile, and then I like the way radio lines just became radio and audio lines. It
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
a
Yeah.
Yeah.
simple tweak, but it's just because audio has been reborn in the digital age, so they also decided to immediately bring that into the fold.
No, and
When we
they
talk,
also spend a lot of time talking to the judges and evolving it within the categories itself. So
Right.
I remember, when we were judging healthcare, there was this whole thing of communication to doctors and communication otherwise. And then they realized that in countries like, so for the pharma category, for example, in a regulated country, it's very
hmm,
difficult to get an ad out, and
yeah.
in a non-regulated country, and especially when you do public service, it's very
Hmm.
easy to get the ad out. So the jury actually suggested that, and they changed the category to regulated and non-regulated. And that just makes so much sense.
Correct.
So I actually, hats off to them. I know we're digressing from the entry topic, but yeah, yeah,
No, it was true, Amit. I think Can should be given a lion for being creative with devising categories.
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
true.
Basically, because I just found out this year there's a fair amount of dignity of labor subcategories. So while we thought they were obvious, there was like a wave, if I may, of the gender equality time, right?
Hmm.
So there's an interesting multi subcategories in public service on dignity of labor, which I hadn't really spotted earlier. So it's interesting.
As Amit observed, that it also depends on the cultural and social nuances of any country to, present their entries in a category. If we talk about India, do you think there are certain categories that where there's a better chance of an Indian campaign winning, or it's not like that?
Like, every year I hope that India, being, the typical way India is shown, does not win, just for our
But
sake, but it always does. It
I got your
always
point.
does.
Yeah.
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 No, but India
But
once big on like, film and print, right? But like, look at our
Hmm.
mobile penetration and like, the kind of like, with the leap we have made in mobile, but it's not reflecting in Can, right?
In
So I
Canada.
think like, I think that's where our opportunities lie on how can we show the stuff that's happening on mobile in Indian market. Like, this rural guy sitting somewhere is like talking to a dentist somewhere, right? So I'm like,
Exactly.
there's so many things happening, but the reflection of all that is not happening at the lion stage. I think that's a challenge for India for sure.
I think changing, Mukund. I think gone are the days that it was. I mean, film was always a little difficult because of the
Yeah.
level of craft. Print was the easiest, but if you look at the
Yeah.
entries in the last few years, it's healthcare 16, 17. Film is, I mean, print is 2, 3. Digital was fantastic. Web Chutney hit it out of the park.
Yeah.
Interesting ideas like the Punishing Signal, I'm sure will happen. Even films. I'm
Yeah.
predicting, but the Cadbury Diwali stuff should happen, and that's not just pure film. It's film
Right.
plus purpose plus this thing. So I think that is luckily changing. But
Yeah.
I think Slumdog Millionaire phenomenon will be there.
No,
you
so
know. So
I
Stop
just want to
doing
add
yourself.
over here that some years ago I came to know of this concept of misery tours, where foreigners foreigners who come to Bombay, they will stay at the Taj, but then they'll go to Dharavi, and
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there's a proper tour organized.
yeah. So that I think that was very much reflected in I mean
Yeah.
that is the big what is in every Westerner's head about India. So when you
India.
have an entry which conforms to that, they say, yeah, this is it. But I think as Amit saying, it's changing a lot. I mean, even things like Hagglebot or Voice of
Yeah.
Hunger.
Yeah.
Those maybe they tricked it with the word hunger in the title.
No, honestly, I think Shimanto, I think we should use our culture too, and it's not just an Indian thing. When you're judging, I think as a judge, and because Can has the most diversified jury, you
Hmm.
constantly want to learn something new about some other culture. So you want to know where that creative is coming from,
Right.
and if you get that little insight that bargaining is such a big thing,
Yeah.
in India, and it's something that may not, so it's something new you're learning, and
Right.
having an idea based on bargaining, I think
No, no,
makes a
I'm
lot of sense.
I'm
Yeah, yeah.
agreeing with
Yeah.
that. I'm just saying that, in fact, that's a step forward from the kind of stuff that was winning earlier, which was
Yeah.
Yeah.
always to
Correct,
do
correct.
with
It's a
the
step
misery
forward
tour.
from at least what was winning like 5 years ago, right? But I think we still have miles to go in winning like a e-commerce lines, for example, right?
Hmm.
I think that's an opportunity. I mean, I spent the last 5 years in China, right? And the kind of e-commerce leap that China has taken, and it's like like something like pocket Wi-Fi is winning in Cannes. I think that's where the opportunity lies for us. I feel like to create that kind of cases that kind of like get celebrated at a global stage.
Right.
Great, great, great. Now coming back to the topic from where we started, like how do you go about picking those entries? Can all of you tell me what's the process at your agencies? Like Mukund, you can always like you could draw from your international experiences as well. Is the culture different from Indian agencies? And Amit, you too, because it was like at Wonderlab, it would have been your first year picking those entries. You have been doing it for years for your own
Right.
agency and other agencies as well. So is it like do your internal teams make a presentation in front of you with the case studies in place, or it's just about the numbers that right now we have social numbers for most of the campaigns, you depend on them largely?
No, I
Whoever
think
wants to go first.
yeah. I mean, clearly the question to first ask is, are you proud of what you've created, and is it the best in class, right? Uh, and of course, like from then on, like you're picking like some of the best pieces from your agency. You're working with your ECDs, CCOs, and picking the best in the agency. And of course, like every agency has this either a creative council kind of global system or a regional system where the shortlisted pieces get tightened, solidified, strengthened, and I think like I think that's a good way to kind of like at least bounce off your cases from at least like to peers outside of your country, and just to get a sense of what they think of the case. How do we strengthen it? And I think like when enough eyeballs go on it, it kind of becomes a strong entry.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So honestly, I've been on both sides of the place, right? So being part
Exactly.
of the Grey Global Creative Council, and I think most everybody else is from a network agency, and the council actually plays a huge role. So literally, almost 80% of the entries are chosen by the council. You have 3 to 4 council meetings during the year. Uh, the council kind of directs which entries to focus on, depending on a 7+, 8+, or whatever the system is. And the council again helps. So kind of says, hey, this has happened or not happened, or this is the way we can view it. Down to in a lot of places, the council also almost getting into writing the AV, if they have to. So
Yeah.
that's one system, of course, over there. And Then, of course, in the last 5-6 years, uh, there's no council, there's no, but this thing, I think the only this thing has to be is the work worth it? There can be
Yeah.
absolutely nothing else. I mean, who's created it doesn't matter. Which brand it is for doesn't matter. Client is pushing. The guy will feel unhappy if we don't push it through. None of that matters. It has to be only the work that
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
matters.
But
Yeah.
I just, Amit, want to talk about the kind of opposite kind of experience. I mean, of course, in the Ogilvy system, it's always been a little haphazard because it's a little bit of all the, sometimes it's the global council, sometimes it's what somebody in your office likes. Could be it's because it's popular in India. But I mean, just to talk about something, it's from some years back, this Cleft to Smile, which honestly, when it was presented at our global council, our global creative chief at that time kind of scoffed at it. And I somehow, being stubborn as I am, we sent it, and it won like gold, and it won a few awards there, which was this tweetable logo, so to speak, for Operation Smile, the cleft palate organization. So yeah, so sometimes, I mean, I can see also, like, while I'm sitting in judgment, and telling people, boss, some young creative, but this is not going to win. I've been on the other side also, where when of course I was not so young, but where people who are my seniors told me, boss, this is not going to work, and we sent
No,
it,
no,
and
I'm with you, Shumanto. I think it's the gut at the end of the day, and and
yeah,
and
it's a
and
gut
like
feel.
literally for 5 years,
Yeah,
it was that, right? Because sometimes you know what it is, you know which category it is for, also in your head, how you're going to package it, and all of that matters. So it is a gut. I mean, it's. I'm not sure the council is the right thing to do. I think it'd be good if councils gave advice and you took that as a base, and
Yeah.
then took your own steps and took your own leeway. But I think some of the council systems are quite strict. So, but that again, history for me. So,
yeah,
yeah. The other thing I think is this whole thing of popularity of work, and we spoke about that, and we spoke about if it's got so many million hits, and or work that was popular. And I remember in the olden days at Ogilvy, we used to, there were these campaigns that were huge in India, right? I mean, somewhere a lot of people told us that, hey, have you entered Bingo for Can? And I was like, obviously not, and it was very clear in my head, because like it or not, there's a certain kind of work that wins at Can, and you can say that shouldn't be the case. It should be Indian centric work, but it's the way it is, right? So it would be silly to expect, say, a Bingo to win, or
yeah.
something emotional, something that's more typical for the world. Just because it's popular here, it won't win there. So
I
I
mean,
think
I
Can is
remember
a
that,
different game. Yeah.
yeah, like the India Pakistan Google ad. I mean, it was one of the most beautiful ads, and it did so well in India. But and it was sent, in recognition of how popular it was. But it didn't. It won something small at Cannes,
Yeah.
but not really big. But that's the thing, I think it's very difficult for us to accept as Indians that our work doesn't always travel, and that's partly,
Yeah.
I think, because however diverse the juries are in Cannes, there is a inherent Western bias. I mean, I've seen campaigns like some beautifully crafted TVC in the days when TVC was big, and it's with a big Hollywood star, which kind of had a big impact in making it win. But if you take an equivalent of an Indian ad with, say, Amitabh Bachchan, it's not. I mean, it means nothing to anybody. And no matter how much we say we are being objective, those things do come into play when you're judging.
Yeah, I
And
think you have to be
have,
ruthless about it. You
yeah,
have to be ruthless, and people get
yeah,
very attached, saying, it's campaign of the year over here, and why would you even not enter it? But it won't win at Cannes. It's as simple as that. Yeah.
yeah,
Anupama?
No, absolutely, because we need to understand every while culturally we may be very different. If the jury doesn't understand what they see or the relevance, then it's going to pick it up. Like I would say from the other side, like when you go to a one show, or the American ads, the ones that win in film typically are the funny films. So and they work in that format, that 30-second is equal to funny. Say a joke, get out, and for them that haha funny wins. Right now, uh, if I go there and I feel that what is so funny about it, why did it win? But again,
Yeah.
that's a cultural thing which works in America, right? So
Hmm.
unlike Cannes, where you have it's like a melting pot of all types of people,
Hmm.
I just feel it's not the case in the other awards. So every award is different, and for Cannes particularly, it's very important that your idea should work for that panel, and more so now, considering that it's not just creative people who are judging. You've got people from Amazon coming
Yeah.
and judging. So it's not just, oh, there are only creative people who are going to come and judge.
Hmm.
So it needs to work across for something to win, because at the end of the day it's about votes, right? And how many do you need to get in for moving it from nothing to a short list and then further on.
I just want to add one more thing here that like, and I'm sure that Amit knows this about this well. That the juries there, for example, all the South American countries, when they sort of vote as one block, they're very clear that they're going to support anything that comes from any of this. Whereas Indians were so busy fighting each other, that, very often we're not going to be fighting for another entry if it's not from our agency. I think that mentality, I mean, I'm sorry to say, and of course
Yeah.
there are many exceptions to that, but I think that that kind of a mentality is there. And not only that, there is lobbying, there is publicizing the work as a block of countries. We don't do any of that.
Hmm.
I think some of it you shouldn't do and is good. I think some of it is goes. I mean, the level at it's which is done is probably wrong. But I just think that as Indians, at least the thing I put on myself when being in a jury is being able to explain our point of view. So very very. I mean, I think that's the job I put on my head, because you're the representative from India or this side of the world in that sense. Along with being a normal jury member. So I think put that this thing on ourselves, saying that, hey, this was behind the idea, and I remember a lot of ads getting big when you explain that this was happening in India. So there was a demonetization idea and what it was and what was the level. I mean, people can't understand that people were dying and standing in lines, for 48 hours to get their own money out, and when you explain that to them, it really helps. So, Shomata, I know what you're talking about. I think that was a slightly older culture too. Uh,
Hmm.
I would presume everybody here, would bring the Indian side of the story out.
That's
I
Keegan,
genuinely do that. Yeah, yeah.
Keegan, you have been quiet for a while.
no. So there's various levels come into play. The levels are largely filters.
Hmm.
So I personally use the vertical levels. So there's the CDs who will largely bring me their. So don't bring me the quantity, right? And then I will try to choose the lessest number of pieces, and then eventually when we went to, there's also obviously an FCB, Worldwide Council, and it obviously helps to see at that stage what the Italians are feeling when there are rounds which are verbal and people kind of, you kind of see them and you identify who's saying what on your piece, right? So there's the Italians, there's the South Americans, there's the Indonesians, even there's the Brits, there's the Canadians, and then interestingly and importantly, there is the secret ballot. So then the real wo doodh ka doodh pani ka pani ho jata hai, and then and then a lot of people say the work is shit, which is important. So then you get both. If you're choosing to be polite, I guess you get those kind of optimistic views, but you also get the hyper filtered views, and that's a great kind of a. And then there are pieces which get a huge number of votes, and I guess the power of the vote, right? Majority wins. It plays out.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's a great thing.
Mukund, you would like to add something?
No, I mean, I think, fuck, I lost the conversation. uh,
It was about how do you internally within the agencies
No,
decide?
like I mentioned, I think I opened by saying that, like how we, I think the best pieces always rise to the top. And then, of course, it's about polishing, making it better, going to the creative council. And I think I also said about, like, the having more eyeballs on it, the much better. I think nobody is out to kill your work, right? They're all out to make your work better. I think that's the sole understanding of a creative council for me, right? They're not like, they're okay, I'm going to shoot your work. I mean, of course, right? But they want to be constructive about their feedback, and they're going to be helpful. And of course, it's up to you how you take that feedback in and how you strengthen the case and make it much, much stronger, right? It's just good to have those opinions, and up to you, you take it or not, but it's good to have all those suggestions and opinions on board.
Mhm. So my next question, I would like Shumanto to start on it, is how to make those case studies, because it's a very important part for any entry to be considered at Cannes. You would have been at both the ends, making your own case studies and now judging other people's case studies before sending them out. What is required? What's the secret recipe?
So I think that, this is like you can't stress the importance of getting the case video right. And I often see, within the agency, people, they may have done a great piece of work, but I think the case video just doesn't do justice to it. What you have to keep in mind is that the jury member is watching, like, a few hundred, if not thousands, of these videos, one after the other. So unless you grab their attention right away, I mean, so the case video also has to be creative. You have to grab the person's attention in the first 10 seconds. Otherwise, they're probably going to move on to the next one without
Right.
even watching all of it. So your case video is your ad for your entry. So unless you keep that in mind and you make this really creative and hard hitting, you're going to lose the jury, and your great piece of work is going to fall by the wayside.
Amit, you would like to add something?
I actually think, I mean, that's true. And how to make a great case study is, I think, a 1 hour session by itself or even longer. Because, I mean, like you said, there are, like, literally, we've been taught rules like say it in the first 10 seconds, catch attention. Naming your entry is important, because when a jury member goes out there and he sees 600 entries, and if he's able to say chalk bot, chalk bot, chalk bot, he remembers that by the end of the day, and that's what comes on top, or laugh at that, and so on and so forth. But my thing is, I think it's gone to the other extreme right now, where people are making fabulous case studies, and we sit through it, and the jury asks at the end, the idea kya tha? And honestly, there's no idea, because it's a fancy case study, and you're seeing everything. But what did they actually do? At the end of the day. So I think juries are becoming more and more cognizant of that. And you are, and I've seen cases, in fact, where the other way around, where the case study was okay, it could have been better, but you recognize that the jury recognizes the idea that was there and says that, hey, maybe it's not the best case study, but as an idea, it deserves something. So I think a lot of people have been giving case studies out to professionals to make, and really that idea gets lost. The other important thing, like I said, is, I think, because of Cannes especially, I think it's important to get the cultural story through. So if you can use a large part of the case study to tell me something that I don't know, and this cultural insight, and therefore this idea, that kind of draws people in. Yeah.
Amit, I'm really jealous of those people, because I've always worked on zero budgets for all our case
Yeah,
studies.
man.
So
No, internationally, yeah,
yeah, no,
internationally
but
there are,
no, you're
yeah,
right.
yeah, yeah.
I've even seen ones from India where they're so beautifully produced. Obviously, money, and I think some network agencies, at least, they pool in funds to do this. But I've never been lucky enough to get something like that. Yeah,
No, but honestly, we we don't get our case studies right. 90% of, I would say, we
yeah,
don't get it. I'll tell you also, the reason is there is a cap on the duration, right? And we like speaking and not coming to the point. And that shows in most of our case studies. So the reason why we suffer is we think we've done a great piece of work and case study kar lenge. We'll do it 1 month before the can. And the reason is, outside, if you meet people from the various countries, they spend a good amount of time just crafting those case studies, and they do at least 4 to 5 cuts of the video itself. And you can imagine the number of times they must be writing that case study and
Yeah.
rewriting it, crafting it, and making it shorter, crisper, to the point, because when you're judging, and I'm sure anybody who's judged knows that they'll put you in a room and you're watching. After some time you're brain dead. It's like things come and things go, and you're just watching. So
Yeah.
if you don't get the attention in the first, say, 15 to 20 seconds, most of them have switched off or will not get it. And like Amit said, not many people are there as a representative from your country, or who even take that onus to get up and say, let me explain what this was. Sometimes, of course, people question, oh, you are from that country, can you just tell me what it meant?
Yeah.
And then you take that point. But otherwise, if you end up doing it, that also is like, are you pushing for that a little? Because that's a separate session when you push for something. So
Yeah.
all those things, I think the problem is we don't spend time on case studies. We think work ho gaya and that's it. Now case study we can figure.
And that's an interesting cultural nuance to India. I feel that even with our holiday homebooks, if you remember, just sitting down day before night and writing down 10, 20 pages of project reports,
And
sending
then
it up.
feeling bad about it, that, oh, why
Yeah.
did I get it? My work was so good.
Yeah.
I like, there was, just want to add to that. I've given old example of something. All the examples I'm giving are a little dated because I am, but so there was something called iFold that we had worked on some years ago, which was basically a paper saving campaign where basically it was very simple. Like, you told people to fold their document or bill or whatever in half or a quarter, and therefore those days Vodafone used to give their bills in like this big A4 size on. So we convinced
Yeah.
them, for example, to halve the thing and fold it. So it was called iFold. And there was one time where we started working on the case video well in advance. We did a couple of them, which was shit. And then, we came up with this idea that since the whole thing was about folding your paper in half. So what we did was we quote unquote folded the screen in half. So in the first few seconds, you sort of see this one side folding onto the other, and the entire rest of the video was on only half the screen and the other half was black. So it was very true to the idea. And even if you're that half asleep jury member with your eyes glazed over, you'll notice that there's something different going on and probably pay attention.
Yeah.
So just I think one good example of when I personally did something right.
Nice.
Mukund?
No, I mean, creating a great case study is like telling a great story, right? But now you're telling a story of what you did to a jury member. So, I mean, don't be boring. That's rule number one, right? And in India, we have this added layer of having to explain the cultural context. And like in India, this, and that goes on for 30 seconds. And then this guy switched off, right? I feel like, how do we say all that and be concise about it and get to the idea faster, right? And like, look at the Australian cases. Like, they open on this morning show thing. There's a big PR thing. Like, they make the idea feel so much bigger. It's a small idea, but they make it so much bigger, right?
Yeah.
We are kind of stuck in a craft of case study. Like, this happened, this happened, this happened. Like, how do we break that mold and create like a bigger feel in that case study that, truly magnifies your idea?
Yeah, completely agree.
Keegan, I'm not sure if you heard my question because I guess we were offline for a while. We're talking about what makes an impactful case study for Kans, and how do you go about it at your agency?
I mean, you got to kill your babies, exactly what Ampa was saying. We find it difficult to throw things out. And see, I guess in India, we are about the buffet, the shadi buffet, So I guess to say it in a manner which maybe, what's interesting is, I'm guessing all of us on this panel agree. So if the work can be Indian and we do deliberate things to make the work Indian, and I call it personally exotic for the Goras, the case study shouldn't be Indian. The case study should be Gora, basically. So it's suddenly, the case studies also have like a different choice of font. And they look European, they look Western, they look American, and that's so. We as Indians to win, it's harder, and we got to try harder, and we got to do these typical Indian jugaad tricks, which I think we are all personally very proud about, to be honest. So keep it slim, and keep it big, and unboring, as Mukund was saying correctly, and definitely use the most relevant and the senior most uh, Gora experienced professional, I would say it brutally, in the system. Let him be or her be your final filter for the case study. Clearly, because the person is not part of the logistics to develop the work per se, but case study chhodna nahi. Bring the Goras in is very.
I think the other thing is, I think we look at it as one case study, but it's not actually. If it's 10 different entries and 10 different categories, there's 10 different case studies.
Exactly.
And that's where a lot of people, the jury really gets twist. So if you have the same case study and you put it across over there, for each, I mean, for different categories. So I mean, if your Instagram case study is the same as your outdoor case study, is the same as your integrated case study, is the same. I mean, that's just, and that's something that really fits, and that's wrong also. So I think you'll have to write the case study according to the category that you're entering in, and that becomes crucial. And sometimes you're entering 4 pieces in say promo, or 4 pieces in activation, and if those 4 pieces come from 4 different categories, you'll have to write them differently.
Exactly.
You may actually start somewhere for one, and the ending might become the beginning for another.
So
Agreed.
clearly
Completely
put
agree.
some money
So
aside
true.
for the case studies,
Because we
because
study for exams the night before, we never end up doing those finely nuanced
that's
versions.
true.
That's
But
true.
clearly the amount that we keep aside for,
Hmm.
there is, like, when we segregate the monies, there is entry amount, there is work related amount that we spend on the work itself, but the case study amount should be always separate, has to be separate. Because if you don't get a proper editor, if you don't get people who know their job to do those case studies, it ends up looking tacky. If it is an in-house PPT which has been transformed into a case study, it will look like that.
Agreed, agreed. That's a nice point. Also, I would like to ask you, all of you agreed and at some point mentioned that sending an Indian entry and winning at an international stage is a task in its own, because the jury might not know the cultural nuances, might not have ever seen that ad before, as opposed to other international entries. Do you think that at this point, agencies can use media better, even at the stage when you're launching a big campaign? So apart from the general press releases and apart from the general interviews, could you indulge the media better and maybe talk to international media more frequently so that they know that something out there has happened and they read it there and then just find out?
Absolutely. I don't think there's any question on that. Thankfully, most of the network agencies nowadays have started doing this. So if there's a
Yeah.
good piece, what they do is they internally circulate it amongst the team members, and one email goes across countries, offices. Having said that, there are separate PR people handling for the news outside, where you want to put it out of India, and not just limit the PR to India itself. Having
Mhm.
said that, that's still that not seeing, you can't escape that too much. I think there are so many South American pieces that we don't see, right? So
Exactly.
those things will exist. I mean, you can't fight that completely. Also, the thing is that many people, and this is also something that I'm sure every agency does it differently. There are some people who start their rounds with can, and
Hmm.
then there are some people who end their round with can, because
With
they
can.
want to ensure that every jury, because juries obviously get repeated, that
Hmm.
at some point of time they would have seen the work
Exactly.
and finally end up. So every I think every creative head
Hmm.
has a different style to come to when it comes to can, particularly can.
Hmm. Mukund, you would like to add something?
No, I think a lot of times work gets, I mean, that work is seen before, before it gets awarded, right? I think
Yeah.
whatever forum it is, it's important to find those forums to get the work, the recognition that it deserves, right? Because imagine, these guys are going through 1,000 pieces of work, and I mean, I mean, there's a lot of things like, it might get missed out on, but if you find a way to get the work out even before the award show, and it gets, recognized in enough places, be it a ad forum, be it anywhere, right?
Mm.
It kind of gives that credibility to the work, right? I think that kind of adds value.
I think there's the opposite to that also, in the sense of times that we won biggest is when the work was the freshest. No, we knew absolutely no one had seen the work before, and they see it for the first time, and it just gets a great reaction. Versus,
Yeah.
I know one person from the industry who actually makes sure that so if it was a print jury or the outdoor jury, everybody got a framed copy of the work,
Right.
at their homes in advance, and that could kind of put you off also, right? Or you've
Mm.
kind of you've seen it, you've got a defense through it, your mind's been thinking on it.
I mean,
Yeah, I
it's
mean,
the,
yeah, yeah,
I mean,
yeah,
like,
yeah,
I
yeah,
think
yeah.
there's a saying, right? You need to increase the surface area of luck, right? And how do you increase the surface area of luck is by showing it to everywhere in every single
Exactly.
forum, right? I
Exactly.
mean, of course, you could get lucky and, some fresh pieces get awarded, but just increasing that surface area of luck, that's it.
It's a good way.
Keegan, Shumanto,
Sorry.
Keegan and Shumanto, like you guys haven't spoken yet about this.
Do we want to go?
No, Keegan, go.
So,
Yeah.
it's. I mean, we are now many years of things going viral,
Hmm.
and you made a fair point, and I guess everybody would. It's an oxymoron, no? If you have to activate formal PR, companies, partners, channels. It's so I'm not sure, So if we are advertising, if we have the power of the video, and if even a piece of graphic design can be videoed, can manifest as a video, and let's assume people like seeing pictures, whether they are static or motion. I think the work today can be PR'd. So most of the work that wins at least gold, should it be the work that actually got famous? I
Yeah.
personally think it's a fair yardstick, So, uh, I mean, and then there are other points of view, like if the work is Hindi language or non-universal language, so the work can get viral in India, but is the work really going to go overseas? Is a question.
Yeah.
Like, imagine if Lagan was, a film of today. It would have
Hmm.
been so-called, broken the internet, as one calls it, right? Would
Yeah.
it really have gone? So even at that time, and it's many, many years ago, it's actually 20 years ago. So they had there were ways in which things got famous, but they personally had to go and lobby it and, stay there for 6 months and all that in the LAs of the world and the US of the world for the Oscars, right? So what I'm saying is that, there are still examples in the world of viral. We see Thai films. Some of them win. So there's this Thai brand. There's the funniest work on the planet is Thai, and the sappiest, saddest work where you're going to, really bawl your eyes out is Thai. And I've seen examples of the work getting viral. So
Hmm.
so I have a mixed view. Yeah, if I mean, why activate PR machinery if we are the guys who are meant to make work famous, and if this is
Exactly.
awesome category, the awesome stratum of work, it's meant to get famous. So yeah.
Yeah, so I agree mostly with Keegan because I think that even what Amit was saying is true, that sometimes when you're seeing something fresh for the first time, also you can have a wonderful reaction to it. But I've also seen that campaigns which have a buzz going about it,
Hmm.
from the word go, tend to win bigger because jury members have been exposed to it. If they've seen it at their leisure, whereas not in this kind of pressure cooker atmosphere of the jury room. I think that buzz going for it does help, and but it's difficult. I mean, like again, I've seen a lot of the other countries where they have these publications which are given out with their work in it. And at one time, I remember this Loser's archive was the big thing. They used to have a can issue, and so much of the work in that book would end up winning. So if there was some way that you sent your work out to them, and they included it, it seemed to have a bigger chance of winning. So
Mhm.
there are various ways of doing it, but it's not easy. I mean, just because you want to send your press release out to the international media doesn't mean they're going to pick it up,
Pick it up.
right? So
Yeah.
if you have like a really strong corporate communications person in your organization to help you do that, or your international network helping you do that, I think it does help. Even just putting in a word with people, sharing it with people, internationally, if your network with other, creative people who are on a lot of international juries, I think it does help. But it's not to say that that's the only way to win. I mean, it can also be the other way where people are seeing this fantastic piece of work for the first time and like are so wowed by it that it totally speaks for itself. But I think more often than not, a little bit of buzz also helps.
Okay. We are short on time now, but we have just one or two audience questions. Any one of you would like to answer them? So one is, how can a new or upcoming agency applying for CANS for the first time approach the submission process?
I think Amit can answer this.
Yeah, I think it depends whether the person applying is upcoming or not. I think if you've had experience
Amit was
elsewhere,
not an upcoming person,
yeah, I mean, I've done that for a long time.
He has
So
experience.
but still you have like,
yeah, so I think you took the learnings that you applied elsewhere. I mean, you've been part of global councils. You took that learning over there, and you again had we done that for about 8-10 years while doing it for ourselves. I think there's some nice systems in place, and I think systems are coming up in place also. So I think there's a short list that has been introduced by Curious, which is quite amazing. If you're literally new to it, the short list kind of advises you. So before you start entering, you enter your idea to the shortlist, and the shortlist has a fairly decent national international jury that kind of advises you on where the idea could go, and it plays the role of a council. Again, very interesting. Another new thing that came up, and I think these are things that are coming up to help the system. Uh, so independent agencies obviously don't have an international council, right?
exactly.
So per Pedersen used to be the head of the Grey Global Creative Council. Fabulous guy, was part of the journey where Grey went from nowhere to number 3 on the can list, and he started something called the network. So the network is a network of independent creative-led agencies, and what they do is they have councils for these agencies. So if you're an independent agency and you're part of the network, then the network helps you, come to the council, gives you the council, gives you international guys, all of that. So there's some interesting solutions floating out there. But yeah, I think it just helps to have done it before, even if it's in a new place. Obviously yeah.
And should they also look at creating creatives for specific categories? I don't think I've understood the question, but
I
We
wouldn't do that. I think that's what Keegan spoke about, and we can, so there are very, very, very specific categories. 5-second radio below 5 second. There used to be something called transit media in airports. So literally taking that category and creating something for that category. But honestly, I don't think you should. I mean, you should be creating work for awards to start with. I think work should be for brands and solutions and things like that. And
Right.
the best work to solve a problem for the client. And then, of course, you can package it correctly for the awards. So I personally would be uncomfortable with that. I would rather have the right work and then decide what are the right categories for it.
Yeah, totally.
I think that's absolutely correct. And also, in one of my previous agencies, we used to have this thing called 40 boxes. And I don't know how many of you have heard of it. It's basically for any brief, you start with the box, and most probably, by the seventh box, you are literally tearing your hair apart. But the point is that, and it's the same thing for any idea. Cull it till you feel that you've reached the jackpot.
anyone else would like to add something?
No, I think like Amit said, I think doing work for the brand, work for the brief, answering a real problem, coming with the real solution is the way to go. If it happens to be a 5-second ad for a radio, so be it, right? But you don't start at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember there was something for the Guinness Book of World Records, and it was the world's shortest radio spot which won at Cannes, which was under 5 seconds. Yeah.
Well, it was great interacting with you all today. We have run past our time. I would request all of you to give one small parting note about the session, about something you would like to tell the audience, and then we'll call it a day. Starting with Mukund, because now he's first on my
No.
screen.
No, I'd like to just wish all you guys. I mean, it was great chatting. It was a great chat, and it was great to meet Amit and Sumanto and Anu after such a long time, right? I know all these guys have entries. Anu doesn't have entries, but whoever has entries for next week can. So all the best.
Amit,
Yeah, I think get the work right. I mean, that's your biggest problem. Get good work out there. Get a fantastic solution for a client. Be fresh. Use new technology. Do the kind of work you believe in. What's right for the brand, and yeah, the entry process will sort itself. That's the least of your issues there.
Sumanto,
Yeah, I think just remember that not all great work travels well to the south of France. So don't get too carried away just because it got 15 million hits in India.
Anupama.
No, thank you very much for having us, and it was great meeting all of you guys in this situation that we've been in the last 1 year, 1.5 years. So really, really nice chatting up with all of you. And like I believe, work on the brands. I think when you do good work on the brands and it gets noticed, automatically it qualifies for your can, right? And choose your entries well. Don't try and be greedy with the numbers.
Yeah.
Keegan.
Yeah, I fully agree. In fact, taking from there, it's not about quantity. It's there. I mean, if you say I have 5 awesome pieces, slightly oxymoronic, right? So 5 awesome is not gonna is not correct. So just don't go for the quantity. Go for the. I think be really hard on yourself. Go for the one, because the one wins the quantity. That one piece will win 4, 5, and it will kind of do a clean sweep. I also feel, taking again from what the panelists have said. So either big brand, because Patli Gali is a thing of the past. That is finished. It's passé. So big brand, or if you're doubly lucky, something that is proactive but seems very big brand.
Yeah.
Beyond that, the pattern is there are no patterns. Go for, I think someone said this, go for gut. I think it's about eventually the magic beyond the logic. It's about what there's one rule. The only rule is it really mind blowing? That's all.
Great, great. Thank you so much, everyone, for your time today. It was nice chatting with you all. Have a nice evening. Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So
Thanks
much.
for having
Thank you.
us.
Bye guys. Thank
Thanks.
you.
Bye,
Bye.
guys.
Thank
See
you.
you.
Bye. See you.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.